Well, we were telling you in the last half an hour that the lifeboats from Dover and the Womer lifeboats were heading back at pace with a casualty on board. We're looking at the lifeboats heading into harbour now. Not only do they have, it seems, a casualty on board, but they've also picked up the occupants from one of these small boats. It is from what we can see, front and back of the Dover lifeboat, full of migrants. Now, the Dover lifeboat can hold actually up to about 80 migrants on board, so it gives you an indication when you're seeing them at the front and the back just how full it's likely to be. Now, it's accompanied by the Womer Class B rigid inflatable lifeboat that was assisting the Dover lifeboat out in the middle of the channel when reports came through of migrants in the water. At least one migrant was pulled from the water. Now, we don't know what the condition of that migrant is. They've been described as a casualty. To be frank, that can mean anything from someone who is died, to someone who is very hypothermic, to someone who's just a bit cold and wrapped in a blanket. So from what we understand, looking at the two lifeboats now, they came in the eastern arm of the harbour. They are now heading past the lifeboat station, and it looks to me as though they're heading to the Western Jetfoil, which is the Border Force processing centre, that makeshift group of porta cabins and other buildings at Dover Harbour that Border Force use to process the migrants. And the reason for that will be the fact that this lifeboat is not just carrying a casualty, but is carrying dozens of migrants pulled from a boat. Now, in addition to the lifeboats coming in there with migrants that they've taken from a migrant dinghy, we have multiple Border Force vessels out in the channel, some speeding back to Dover as well, having picked up not just from one boat at a time, but double loaded from two boats at a time. So we are expecting that potentially 400 to 500 migrants will have crossed the English Channel by the end of today. And what is remarkable about that is that this was only a tiny weather window of some 12 hours, hardly any time really for the seas to die down. And indeed, they haven't. Although the wind died down for a bit, the seas have remained pretty rough out there. And now the wind's picking up again because that window has passed. So it really is it's kind of deceptive. We look at the images here, it looks flat calm, but in the middle of the channel, it really is rough. The winds are churning up the waves, and that's why migrants are ending up in the water. The Border Force vessel Ranger is on its way back in to Dover Harbour as well, and we are told that there's multiple migrants who are described as casualties, so migrants that fell into the water at some point during the process to try to get them offloaded and onto the Border Force vessels. So there you are, live on GB News. You're watching images of both the Dover and the Womer lifeboats coming into Dover Harbour, heading for the Western Jetfoil to unload the first group of migrants in this fresh surge who've crossed the English Channel today.
This video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect yourself this Christmas with one of the best VPNs out there. Cybercriminals are out to get your bank account information while you do your Christmas shopping online. But you can protect your privacy, money, and identity now with ExpressVPN for as little as 8 pence a day. Click the link now to claim up to 75% off.
Mark White, that's our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. We've still got our panel with us, Stephen Pound and Mike Parry. Stephen Pound, foolishly at the weekend, a Labour minister was trumpeting the fact no migrants had crossed for 28 days.
Yeah.
It's all about the weather.
Of course.
It's just all about the weather.
Yes,
and then the very day he was boasting, 700 landed.
Yeah, I find it extraordinary. I mean, the two things here that are fascinating. Firstly, the actual number of illegal immigrants to this country and immigration generally is actually falling quite dramatically. But the second...
4 million since 21. 4 million.
Yeah, well,
4 million.
Under Boris Johnson, 4.2 million in 4 years. Come on, it's a pretty high bar.
But look, I'm not being discriminatory. The whole thing is a disgrace.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that this is the image. This particular image is so corrosive. It's so desperately dangerous. Yeah. Even if we had absolute zero immigration at any other, these pictures will be the ones that actually resonate with people.
I agree with you. It shows we've lost control.
You're completely lost control. All we've got to do is put out the message, because I thought we had now a hard Home Secretary who's going to get tough and, maybe introduce some of the Denmark type. But all you've got to say is there are no hotels for you anymore. There are no handouts. There are no free phones. You will be charged. No benefits. You will be charged to enter this country, and any wealth you have, what we acquire, we will take off you.
Mike, I'm not entirely up to the idea of ripping people's wedding rings off and ripping their
Why not?
But look, let's just actually work out a proper If people can talk about putting the Royal Navy into the Channel, it's nonsense. The French finally are actually admitting that at the moment the French policy has always been, let's get that out of our country into the United Kingdom. Yeah. What they're now realising is if they actually stop this, it actually goes back down the supply chain.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And so the answer is if the British stop it, the French stop it, then you'll find
that the current French administration doesn't recognise that. It's the future French administration that might recognise that. And just like Starmer, they're reacting to something that might happen in the future to save their political future.
Bardella
absolutely.
The Front National, or whatever they're called nowadays, they're actually making the case in the same way that, let's be honest, Nigel Farage has actually changed the weather in this country. We can't
you stop all the benefits, Stephen? You're a level-headed, pragmatic
I just think
politician.
It's even more simple than that.
I think
the proposal by the Conservatives last government and then by Reform now, that if you come here illegally, you cannot stay. Regardless of how verifiable your claim, regardless of how genuinely tragic your story is, if you come here illegally, you can't stay. I think that's the only possible...
But we know there's no will to send people back.
Don't you think it's incredibly difficult to understand how to take children on a school trip? Every parent who wants to volunteer has to go through an extended DBS check, and yet we will take people, anybody, we don't know who they are, what crimes they've committed, into the country, disperse them into the community to do what?
And we don't know what is in their heart. Is there hatred in their heart? Is there hatred for this country?
Well, we know that some of them have committed crimes against young British women, young English women, because their attitude to women in the countries they come from is completely different to our civilised society. Absolutely.
It's not only illegal.
Absolutely.
Look, as I've said this before, what they do in Holland is you do not actually set foot out of the airport, out of the seaport, out of the docks until you have been checked and vetted. Now, at the moment, look, you've got this scheme to actually have a place down in
Kroger. So many, that would take a year.
Well, hang on a second. No, we've got a huge backlog, absolutely. But the idea, they're talking about using an ex-military training place in Kroger. The local residents are up in arms about it.
Surprised.
How can we solve this problem unless we actually have a place to receive the immigrants, to fingerprint them, to take the details?
Don't receive them.
If they turn up on
Push them back.
Push them back.
Well, hold it there. In the next hour, I will have a cup of coffee in my... I'm not sure about drinking a drink with my face on it. But anyway, sticking on this topic, we're going to be joined now by Professor Anthony Glees, who is a counter-terrorism expert. Professor Glees, thank you so much for joining us. Professor Glees, can you hear me? Oh, brilliant. I can, yes. Now, you're going to talk to us in a minute about seasonal warnings of heightened risk on public transport. But would you mind just commenting, first of all, for us on what we can see here with the number of small boats crossing the Channel with migrants, undocumented migrants, being picked up by British border forces? Do you think that poses a security threat?
Of course it poses a security threat. It poses a direct threat because, as your people are saying, we have no idea who these people are. And even if we did think we had some idea, it would probably be a false idea. And secondly, it poses a national security threat because it enrages people. It turns people to anger. And no sane Brit wants to live in a country which is riven by anger. The failure of the government to deal with this as a national security problem is astounding. People like me, I'm on record 2015, when Angela Merkel let in, had a stroke, over 1 million people into Germany about whom she knew nothing, I said this will start a security threat in every single EU nation. Of course, we were still part of the EU then. We're out of it, but it is even more of a threat to us after Brexit than it was before. In my opinion, the time has come for those lifeboats. Yes, they're doing a very important thing. They're saving life at sea, but they should be going in the opposite direction.
Quite right, too.
Well said, Professor. Take these people back to France.
I know,
because we should sue the French. This is our expense, but the fault of the French for not safeguarding their southern borders. So it is completely ridiculous, and it is a danger. We do not know, and I think it was Stephen Pound, who used to come and visit us at Brunel University when I was a professor there, always forthright. And he gets it absolutely right when he says we're bringing people into Britain who come from cultures who treat women like dirt. We can't be surprised if they behave in the same way in this country. It is completely unacceptable, and the government really does it. And there's constant talk of not involving the Navy. Yes, we should involve the Navy to make sure that the lifeboats go back to France, not to Britain.
And it's, Professor, I think it's also part of the reason why support for our main political parties has collapsed, because the Conservatives presided over this appalling policy of allowing all these people to come in. We don't know who they are. Labour the same. It's no wonder Reform are surging in the polls, because they're saying they will be repelled immediately. Whether they can do it, but at least they're saying it.
Well, I cannot dispute that fact, and it is true in every other European country, that there has been a backlash because the delivery of security is the first aim of any government. And therefore, to see the pictures of our national security being flouted is unacceptable to everybody. I mean, whatever their politics may be. I'm not a creature of the left, but I think people on the left of British politics feel this as strongly. First of all, we need secure borders, and we have to do whatever it takes to have secure borders. We're not going to kill people. I'm not suggesting that. But there are some other remedies. And, we have a brilliant new head of our secret intelligence service, Blaise Metroelli. She actually talked about MI6 needing to be deployed against the smugglers and the dinghies. MI6 does have a license to kill, and in my view, the people who make the boats, the people who get money from selling places on the boats, not the people who on the boats, but the people making money out of it, they are legitimate targets for MI6. We should jolly well go after these people. And I don't think the British or any other Europeans will be satisfied. They will continue to vote for parties who promise they will stop it. Now, I'm just a pointy-headed academic, so I can't promise anything. But governments do need to sort this. It is their primary duty.
I quite agree. That's Professor Anthony Gleeson, National Security and Counter-Terrorism. So thanks so much for joining us. We're going to go straight back to Dover, where our Home Security Editor, Mark White, can update us on these scenes. If you're listening on the radio, one of the lifeboats appears to have moored. Mark, over to you.
Yes, that's a Dover lifeboat now docked at the Western Jetfoil, and migrant after migrant now walking up that gangway to the processing centre that Border Force has here at Dover Harbour. This is the first of a number of boats that are due in. I can see out at sea at the moment the Border Force vessel Ranger, which is closing down on Dover Harbour as well. Within, I would say, probably the next 10 to 15 minutes, that will arrive here at Dover Harbour. We estimate between 400 to 500 migrants are crossing the English Channel today, and as Professor Anthony Glee said, the majority of those, mainly young men, will have no identifying documents. We've filmed as they've tossed those documents in the sea, as they've hidden them in the sand dunes on the other side of the English Channel, all with a view to hiding who their identities are, because they want to to stand a better chance of getting asylum here in the UK. But the flip side of that is we don't know who they are. There is obviously a significant security concern.
Thank you, Mark, very much for those, very disturbing pictures, and we will, of course, be bringing you up to date throughout the day.